Childhood. Everyone has fond memories from their childhood, except if you're from the Balkans. Coming of age is a momentous and special occasion for us all. A magical time when boys turn into men and girls turn into, women. However, in the Balkans, the puberty fairy has a slightly different method for initiating you into the magical world of eternal heartbreak, induced alcoholism, and fighting with the IRS. Nevertheless, the process of growing up is quite magical. Except when it isn't. For starters, if you were a normie with broke-ass parents who worked some blue-collar job, or had loser parents who weren't party members, and had the displeasure of working in some hubcap factory whose toxic fumes would slash your lifespan by a minimum of 11 years, you most likely lived in some bumfuck industrial town in the middle of your country's most neglected province, where the biggest attraction was the German factory that only opened there because your country had a lack of human rights and labor laws, and the president offered it a sick tax cut. As a result, you didn't have a whole lot of green places to play in. Your choices were kicking a busted soccer ball in the street and praying to God the driver didn't have a BAC over 0.05%. or play in the commi blocks. Now, the commi blocks for the most part were fine. You could play all sorts of games with your friends such as hopscotch, red light, green light, Iceman, or Spider-Man, but instead of swinging from building to building in New York, you were swinging to avoid cigarette butts and needles that the older kids and junkies left the previous night. If you happened to be a wee bit too loud, you could expect some bust-up grandma to yell at you from her window, and if you particularly got on her nerves, she'd throw boiling water at you. Even if you dodged the water, there were still other threats for your life in the blocks. If you lived in a more rural town, you'd also have to watch out for stray dogs, which may or may not have been vaccinated against rabies. This was a particular threat if you rode your bike at all. Nevertheless, the dogs made for great cardio, so long as it was summer. If it was winter, then you were straight out of luck, as now the air was also out to get you, as the farmers burning their crops and people using coal to warm up turned the air into a toxic smog that was only outdone in carcinogens by God's chosen land of the East. But although you may not have been able to keep your lungs safe, you can always keep your data safe with Atlas VPN, baby! You know what, guys? I like Atlas VPN. Your grandma likes Atlas VPN. Hell, even your weird neighbor across the street likes Atlas VPN. But you know who doesn't? Hackers and greedy companies trying to get your data. And that's precisely why you should get Atlas. Because with Atlas VPN, the days of ads and malware on your computer are over. And lucky for you, Atlas is having a holly jolly Christmas discount for Atlas Premium for just $170 per month and a whopping 6 months for free. If that isn't the best deal you've ever heard of, I don't know what is. So don't waste any time and go get Atlas VPN right now! Alongside with keeping your devices safe, Atlas also protects you from online shops that implement price discrimination based on your geographic region. And it also allows you to watch different TV shows and movies locked away from you by Netflix, because God forbid you have access to Rick and Morty on Netflix in the US. So what are you waiting for? Go and get Atlas Premium right now for just $170 a month. And get your 6 months for free by going to atlasv.pn/Europe. And if you dislike the service, no problem. You have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So go check it out. By supporting Atlas, you support me. Again, go to atlasv.pn/Europe and protect yourself. If you were still able to survive the angry grandma's packs of rabid dogs and air straight out of Chernobyl, you still didn't find solace yet. You also had to look out for your household, because even they were out to get you. Your typical living arrangement in the Balkans included your parents, grandparents, and siblings, if you had any, under the same roof. If you had multi-generational wealth, you'd be living in a duplex split between your close family and your grandparents. Yet, if you were a brokey, you'd all be together in one house or apartment. Now, this too would be fine if you didn't have to have a MMA match with your siblings every single night or hear them snoring until 4 AM, which would then make you forget what the fuck even was in mitochondria, which would then result in you having a GPA of less than a 4.0 on your report card, which would then prompt your parents to bring out the Gucci belt they got that one time you went to Greece for vacation and kept in the closet for special occasions. However, even if you did have your own room, you'd still be able to hear your parents arguing or doing other things in the bedroom, because God forbid the walls were any thicker than your average notebook. And if you somehow were able to get some private time in the bedroom, your parents and everyone else living in the house would constantly walk in without ever knocking on the door. Which, if you're a 14-year-old Balkaner discovering the charms of the internet, isn't the most fun thing in the world. If you had the displeasure of living in a bigger town and had to live in an apartment, there's a good chance you also had to sleep on a fold-out couch. And no, these weren't your modern day foldouts you'd get at IKEA, but that cheap Eastern European shit imported from Turkey or China or some other country with an authoritarian regime. Which meant you'd constantly have dense and uneven surfaces on the couch, which would give you back pain the next day, or you'd have springs poking through and make it really hard to fall asleep, and depending on your financial situation, you may have or not have had to share it with your siblings or parents. If you were also able to survive the sleeping arrangements, you then also had to deal with the temperature control. For some godforsaken reason, in the winter when the city decides to start heating up for the season, they almost always jack it up to near the temperature of the sun. So then you're forced to open up the window so you don't burn to death, and subsequently argue with your father for opening up the window and costing him a fortune. But you also weren't allowed to open up the window in the summer either because of the dreaded soul-sucking, life-threatening, grandma-killing promaya/kurant. For some reason, rational thinking Balkan adults still have it in their skulls that you will die if you have a refreshing cold breeze of air blowing in your face. Like everything else that's wrong with the region, this superstition too came from the times of the Ottoman occupation. And no matter how many times it has been disproven, you still get in arguments with every single female person above the age of 40 in your family over opening the goddamn window. Now, while home life in the Balkans wasn't ideal, you could at least escape to the school playground. If you've watched my last video in the Balkans, you know schools were a special place, and if you haven't, you definitely should watch it. However, the Schoolyard was just as special. Alongside with playing a variety of games with your friends and role-playing as Naruto characters, you'd more often than not also have the Schoolyard kiosk, which sold a variety of goods from 7 days croissants and juice boxes to the toy of the month. Each month there was a new trendy toy that would come in non-see-through packaging that would carry some plastic collectible toy. And every day, all the kids from your school would spend their lunch money purchasing these toys and trading so they have a complete collection of all the possible models, or make up a game with them. God bless the Go-Go's. You also had those magazines that each week had a different collectible like human organs or rocks and minerals or magic English, for which the kids would beg their parents to buy them an issue. Of course, you can't mention playground antics without mentioning the coveted Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I think we were all obsessed with Yu-Gi-Oh at one point in our childhood. The main problem about playing Yu-Gi-Oh in the Balkans was there were almost no legitimate card sellers anywhere. So the only cards you could get were these cheap Chinese knockoffs which had extremely butchered descriptions and attack and defense stats. So a lot of the time these kids would print their own Yu-Gi-Oh cards because they either couldn't afford them or get the real thing. Other times you'd have some kids play with either German, French or Spanish cards because one of their relatives lived in the EU and would send them then. So, more often than not, they cheat and make up effects their cards can do, as no one could tell them otherwise, as no one could read the bloody cards. If you hung out at another non-school playground after hours, so you could indulge in playing with the playground equipment, you also had to watch out for broken, sharp and rusty play structures, as the slides, swings and seesaws often riddled with rusty nails sticking out, which were just happy to give you tetanus, or at best, the slides were dented and would give you a nice purple bruise while coming down. However, hanging out with friends wasn't just exclusive to the playground. Once you were in middle school, suddenly your map expanded as you acquired a bike and your parents' apathy to you not coming back in time for dinner. So we'd often go out exploring nearby forests, trash dumps, abandoned factories and whatnot, which was pretty cool. But we didn't always get along. Sometimes, like anywhere else in the world, you'd get in a fist fight with the other kids. Usually this would be another kid from another class or an upperclassman that would try and bully you. Either way, punches would be thrown and afterwards you'd more often than not end up as friends and respect one another. until inevitably you get into another disagreement and repeat the cycle. Yet, arguably the most unifying activity of all was during the winter. After the snow would fall a certain amount, you just had to make snowballs and throw them at cars, and then subsequently run away after the drivers would get out to kick your ass. Or if you were less extreme, there was always ding-dong ditching. Now, in the West, usually you ding-dong ditch by going from house to house. Here in the Balkans, we'd ring up an entire apartment block and then run away to another block and repeat the process. It was quite fun, not gonna lie. But yeah, all in all, although it might have not been the most glamorous of childhoods, it was still fun. And I'd do it all over again. Anyways, let me know how your childhood was. Did you do any of this stuff I mentioned in your country? And as always, thank you for watching this video. If you wish to support me and see more, become a member like these wonderful people, or go to theironicshop.com and buy some of my merch, like my shirts or board games. Everything helps the channel. My name is Janos, and you've watched Living Ironically in Europe.
Hey, why